This is a $500 3D printer, and we're gonna use it to 3D print an entire full-scale Porsche GT3 RS. Also, I should probably mention, I've never 3D printed anything in my entire life, so this is about to get interesting.
Ah yes, the Porsche GT3 RS, a track weapon born from decades of racing heritage. Lightweight, razor-sharp handling, and one of the most thrilling naturally aspirated engines ever made. But here's the catch, a new GT3 RS costs well over $500,000. That's more than 99.9% of the world's population could ever realistically afford. And even if you do have the money, you can't just walk into a dealership and buy one. Porsche carefully controls allocations, meaning you often need an invite or you need to already own other high-end models to even get a spot on the list. So for most of us, the dream of owning one will always be just that, a dream.
But what if we could make one?
After we finished our fake Lamborghini build, I scoured the internet for weeks looking for a new build for the channel when I came across this post on a 3D printing page on Facebook. I immediately sent the owner a DM, sent some money via PayPal to a country halfway across the world, and miraculously, he sent me a Google Drive link with all the files.
And it's everything that we need to 3D print a Porsche GT3 RS. The hood, the bumper, the roof, everything. Now, I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions like, how are you 3D printing a car on such a small printer? What materials will we use? How will it all work? Well, that'll all be explained later in this video, but first we need to buy a donor car. Now, unlike our fake Lamborghini build, which is a kit car shell on top of a BMW chassis, we'll be using a genuine Porsche donor car for this build. We've been searching Facebook Marketplace far and wide, and we've found an insane deal that's almost too good to be true. So right now we've got a huge drive on our hands, so let's go buy our first ever Porsche. I'm actually so excited. Let's go.
So we loaded up the trailer and headed off on a 2,000-kilometer, 17-hour non-stop round trip to Sydney to buy our Boxster completely sight unseen.
In 27 minutes, we will officially become Porsche owners.
And a short time later, we got our first glimpse of the car.
There she is. Look at the racing stripes, dude.
We were on such a time crunch that we didn't even test drive the car. We literally paid the money, loaded it up, and headed straight back to the shop.
So here it is. Our first ever Porsche. Look at this. So like I mentioned, we have not even looked at this thing. We got there, paid the money, put it on the trailer, and here we are. So now we're seeing it for the first time along with you guys.
This is a Porsche Boxster 986. These are often considered the least desirable Porsche. And look, it may not have the prestige of a 911, but what it does have is a mid-engined, naturally aspirated flat six, razor-sharp handling, and the true Porsche driving experience for a fraction of the cost. We paid just $13,000 for this car, and it's in fantastic condition with a full service history.
This is the 2.5 litre flat six manual version, which is pretty insane. And these things are actually considered retro now, which means they're going up in price. And anything like this was around $20,000 to $25,000. So hopefully there's no hidden gremlins in this thing, considering it was $13,000. It's got this beautiful Rothmans Porsche livery on it. Don't ask me what that's about because I have absolutely no idea, but I know that we have a bunch of desirable stuff on this car. So we have the 3-spoke Porsche steering wheel, which is apparently very desirable. The leather interior is in absolutely amazing condition. Just driving it in here, it felt pretty cool. We should probably take it for a drive before we tear this thing down. Look at this. It's so clean, dude. That is crazy. The soft top is in perfect condition, which is like a big thing on these because apparently they deteriorate quite a lot. So yeah, we bought a really clean example and we're going to be pulling this whole thing apart. So we're not going to be using hardly any of it. The soft top goes, rear hatches go, rear bumpers, front bumpers, fenders, hoods, everything. The only thing that we'll be keeping on this car are the doors. So I apologize in advance to any Porsche purists watching right now and crying about the fact that we're pulling apart such a clean car. But because this is gonna be a street car that we're gonna drive everywhere, I wanted to start with a really clean base.
Time to take this thing for a test drive.
Ooh, look at this interior. It's literally perfect. I love it. It's a very retro dash. Also, I'm sure you guys are wondering, what are we gonna do with the engine combo? Well, it's not staying standard, I can promise you that. But again, you'll find more out later in the series. The gearbox feels absolutely fantastic. Like, I know this is the least desirable Porsche that you can buy pretty much, but this is obviously our first ever Porsche, but I immediately get it. Like, this is a very cool feeling car. They're not the coolest looking car, but we're gonna take care of that, so that's not an issue.
Time to put this 200 horsepower to the test.
Dude, that's pretty
picks up. It picks up for sure.
That is really good. Pretty good. Alright, let's get this thing back into the shop and let's start tearing it apart. Well, our first Porsche experience, and this thing is an absolute gem. But before we tear this thing apart, we need to go set up our 3D printers and get our parts printing because we have a long process ahead of us. So like I said in the intro, I've never 3D printed a single thing in my life. So I've called in some reinforcements. Here is Ryan from Fat Lip 3D Printing.
Or Fat Lip Collective as his YouTube channel's called. Ryan is on another level when it comes to 3D printing. He's not just making parts, he's engineering full custom solutions for his builds. So it was a no-brainer to get him in to help us get started.
And now you've come to help me with this insane task.
Yeah.
What is your first thoughts on what we're about to do?
I'm interested to see how it goes.
He knows how much pain I'm about to endure.
In the past, 3D printing was slow, expensive, and inaccessible to the average person. Now the tech has completely changed. Printers are faster, more precise, and way more affordable. We're using the Elegoo Neptune 4 Pro that retails for just 549 Australian dollars.
This is what we've unboxed, and as you can see, there is some assembly required. It is slightly intimidating. I know that once we read the manual though, it's going to come together pretty easily.
Assembly was super simple with just a few bolts on the bottom.
Hey,
Magic.
that's so good.
Then we installed the extruder head, plugged in a couple of cables, and our first 3D printer was ready to go.
And just like that, we have our first 3D printer assembled and ready to put on the bench.
Since Ryan's here as a guest, I gave him the honor of putting the printer on the bench and pulling off the plastic seal.
Oh, it's got lights.
Once we ran through the quick and simple procedure to level the bed, we were ready to start printing.
So the print material we're going to use for this whole build is called PETG.
PETG.
Sorry, PETG. I say
PETG. You can say whatever you want.
It's easier to say.
It's got good UV resistance.
Yes.
It prints well. It's relatively tough.
I'm sure you've all seen these spools before on 3D printers. Well, they contain different materials depending on your application. PETG is perfect for us because it can handle high temperatures, meaning it won't warp while sitting in the sun, and it still prints fairly easily, perfect for a novice like me.
So before we go ahead and start printing the GT3 parts, it's probably a good idea to do a test print on the printer, and they actually come with something called a benchy.
In 3D printing, a benchy, short for benchmark, is a small boat that's become the standard test print for checking printer performance. Basically, if your benchy looks good, your printer's dialed in and ready to go.
It's plugged in, we've got the file on the USB stick, and then we just go print.
And just like that, we're 3D printing. I know it's only a small boat, but this marks the beginning of our GT3 RS journey, and I've honestly never been so excited about a build.
He's done. Hey! This right here is the beginning of our Porsche build, the first ever 3D print on our machines. So that was just made out of nothing, which is just wild. I know I sound like a complete novice 3D printer guy right now, but that's so freaking cool.
Alright, time to explain how we're gonna print a whole car on such a small printer. Someone much smarter than me 3D scanned both a Porsche Boxster and a 992 GT3 RS. Then they merged the two cars together and we end up with this. Every individual color you see here has its own print file for each part. Then each individual part is sliced into pieces that will fit on our 3D printer bed. It's up to us to print all of these pieces and stick them back together like a huge jigsaw puzzle. We're starting with the right front fender. We load the files onto our USB stick, plug them in, and we're ready to print.
So before we start printing, we're using this glue here that we basically just put on the bed, and it helps the print stick to the bed.
Slather a bit of that stuff on and we're good to go.
Alright, print.
Yep.
Fender 1. Oh my god. And that is our first print set up, ready to go. So I'll see you guys in 2 hours and 44 minutes. Cross your fingers that this works for us.
We ended up setting up the second printer so we could have two prints going at once. A huge thanks to Ryan for all of the help. Please do go check out his YouTube channel. And now it's time for us to start tearing down our Boxster. Honestly, I wasn't looking forward to this because when you think of Porsche, you assume it's going to be difficult to work on.
So far, I love how easy this car is to work on. So good.
I removed the tail lights and the rear hatch, and then it was time to check in on our 3D prints. And unfortunately, we had a bit of a problem.
So I didn't think for a second that this process was going to be easy. Obviously, there's a huge learning curve to this. And this right here is how our first test prints turned out basically with the Porsche parts. Now after doing a bunch of research, I've realized it's winter here in Australia and this room gets quite cold. And as you can see here, I've surrounded our printer with cardboard. Basically we've made a cardboard enclosure to keep the heat in. And behind here hopefully should be our first completed print. Are you ready? Please, 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 please. Oh my God. All right, I think that's a completed piece. Oh, she was stuck. You have no idea how freaking good this feels. That is insane. So now that we have this one working and we know the process, I'm gonna set up a couple more prints right now and see if we can't get some more of this front fender printed out.
So we stacked up some more prints and got back to work finding some hidden surprises on our Boxster 986.
These SP Tools rattle guns are super strong, so you know when they don't get a wheel nut off that they're absolutely over torqued. Jeez. All right. So apparently these brakes are Boxster S brakes, so they are upgraded. Look at this, we've got Bilstein shocks, so they're aftermarket, and we have EBAC springs, I think they are, so they're blue springs. Yeah, they're EBAC, they say IBACH, so EBAC, so they're lowering springs, which is pretty awesome. And then in here, it's the car that just keeps on giving. We have headers on the engine, so it's got an exhaust system, which is awesome. I mean, geez, that's just, all these little things are just a bonus, which is so good.
While we were having great success with the Boxster outside, unfortunately in the 3D printing room it was a different story.
Hell yeah. So unfortunately I've had a bit of a setback with the 3D printing. I just have a problem with prints all of a sudden starting to fail. So I've changed some settings and I've had these two going overnight and I literally haven't looked at them, so fingers crossed that the new settings have worked. I turned the temperature up a little bit, but let's have a look. So number one. Yeah, so again, that is so disheartening. Look at this. So obviously this one, by the looks of things, is just fallen over on the bed. But as you can see, like later down the print, it's getting worse and worse. And the print's also bowing at the bottom. So it's not like straight down here, which is the reason it'll be falling over on the bed, which is really annoying. But then you end up with all of this wasted filament. But let's check on number two. Hopefully at least we got one successful print. Nope, that's even worse. No. Just for reference, look at the pile of failed prints that we have here trying to figure out this problem. So of course I didn't think this was going to be easy. We're learning a completely new skill here. Nonetheless, this is really disheartening and we're going to have to figure out exactly why this is happening so we can push through. But I'm going to figure this out. I am determined.
Luckily, after a bunch of research, the issue was solved by manually leveling all of the beds on the printers and we were back to getting successful prints.
Time to remove this soft top because we won't be needing that anymore.
Yep, we'll be converting this car to a hardtop with our 3D printed kit, so the soft top is no longer needed. Once again, this was super easy to remove. 6 bolts and it's ready to come off. This was probably a 2-person job, but in the end, I got the job done.
That was easy, but also not very easy.
Next up, we removed the hood and both fenders, and the car was fully stripped and ready to start its new life.
Last guard to come off. Yes! Now that this is stripped just in time, we can go ahead and start putting together our first 3D printed panel. And here it is, the final piece of the fender printed. So we started 3D printing this fender on Tuesday. It is now Sunday and I have all 20 pieces printed and ready to go. So let's go out into the shop and figure out how we're gonna join these pieces together to have our first full complete panel for our 3D printed GT3 RS.
So here it is, 20 individual pieces, 55 hours of printing, and a whole lot of lessons learned. It may not look like much now, but just wait till you see the finished piece when it's all assembled.
Now, one thing I think I failed to mention throughout the 3D printing process is we actually ended up changing the thickness of the inside of these pieces. So this is a full solid piece here. Obviously that uses a lot of material and takes a lot of time. Whereas this is printed with a 1.2mm wall thickness and actually has 20% infill. So that means it has like a honeycomb infill, and apparently this is actually stronger than the solid piece. Don't ask me how that works because I'm not an engineer, but it is a lot lighter than the solid one, so it saves us a bit of weight and obviously saves us time and material, which is awesome. But enough talking, let's go ahead and stick this panel together.
There's no rocket science going on here. I'm simply using a soldering iron to plastic weld the pieces together. I'm just tacking sticking them together for now, but as you can see, this technique works surprisingly well. Once we got to the more curved pieces, I used a G-clamp as well as a helping hand from friends, and as the pieces came together, the excitement started to build.
I'm actually blown away by how well it's come together, but now it's time to join this to this, and then we will have our first complete fender. I'm just buzzing, man. This is so freaking cool. There's nothing quite like making something out of literally nothing.
So we joined the back half of the panel to the front, and just like that, we had our first fully completed panel. But as you're about to see here, I made a huge mistake.
So this is...
Yep, that really happened. So we built the panel all over again, but this time we put super glue through the seams before we tried picking it up.
And just like that, we have our first GT3 RS panel fully put together. Look at this. It is honestly wild to be holding this in my hands after so many months of planning.
Now that we've got the panel together, it's time to figure out how we can make them strong enough to use on the car.
So what we're gonna do is use fiberglass mat on the back of the panels to give it as much strength as possible. Of course, we don't have to worry too much about how the underside of the panels look, but we really do have to worry about how strong they are.
Time to let this dry overnight and see if our theory's correct.
So it's the following day and our fiberglass is dry, and now I can confidently pick up this panel without the fear of it falling and smashing into a million pieces. And I've got to say, this is very strong now just with that one layer of fiberglass on the back, and it actually feels like a full proper panel now. So now we can go ahead and start sanding it down, and I'm really excited to see how it looks once we've buzzed away all the high points, and that's going to give us a better feel for how hard it's going to be to get this panel straight on the car. Honestly, how cool though. It's a GT3 RS freaking quarter panel. Crazy. So I'm going quite aggressive with the sandpaper, 60 grit. Let's see how it goes.
As soon as I began sanding, it was fairly obvious that with a bit of elbow grease, we were definitely going to be able to get these panels straight. The PETG plastic is super workable, and the sander took care of it with ease.
And just like that, we have our first panel sanded down and ready to be dummy fitted to the car. And I know a bunch of you guys will be behind the screen wondering, how much does this weigh? How long did it take to print? How much did it cost to print? Luckily for you, I'm keeping that all in a spreadsheet so we can figure that all out. But this panel itself took 55 hours of print time. Now, of course, we have a couple of printers, so you cut that in half. We're actually gonna have 3 printers by the time we're done with this video, so that's in thirds. So this one panel is constructed of 21 individual pieces, and it weighs 1.89 kgs. Well, that's how much material it took to print, which means this cost me about $40 Australian to print this panel. Now, of course, we've got the failures and stuff like that, so that's not completely accurate, but just talking about the bits in this panel, just over 40 Australian dollars, which is pretty wild. Of course, it weighs a bit more now because it's got the fiberglass on it. So we will actually weigh these panels later down the track. I know that the front fender from a genuine GT3 RS weighs around 3.5 kg. So this is pretty wild. I think we're going to be pretty accurate when it comes to the weight to the genuine GT3 by the time we're finished. And of course, I know I'm in for a world of pain when it comes to the bodywork on these things, but I genuinely think that we can actually get these dead straight and have this looking basically like a GT3 once this is all said and done. So I'm going to go back there into the printing room and let's get started on printing the bonnet.
The bonnet consists of 45 individual pieces and took approximately 140 hours of print time, not including the failures. I ended up buying a third 3D printer, so I was able to print the whole thing in just over a week.
With a total of 5.2 kgs of material and just over $100 in cost. Now let's stick it all together.
After building the fender, putting the bonnet together was far less intimidating and was actually really satisfying. Piece by piece, it was crazy to see that iconic GT3 bonnet shape come to life.
The bonnet is complete after many hours. Honestly, it wasn't that hard. It just took a whole lot of patience, but I'm getting quite good at sticking these pieces together. But check out the shape. Like, it is just so impressive when you start sticking these things together, how well they kind of pull together and it starts conforming its shape. And obviously it all comes from these parts in here. So as you start to kind of stick it together, I focused really hard on getting these because I knew that they would pull the whole shape of the bonnet together as opposed to the flat parts. But like, It looks so cool. I can't wait to flip it over, but I am going to lay down the fiberglass now and let it dry overnight before I flip it over, because I just don't want to smash it into a million pieces like we did with the guard the first time I picked it up. I learned my lesson. We're not doing that again. There are a couple of gaps here and there where the 3D prints have kind of pulled a little bit, but the overall shape of the bonnet is fantastic. I'm really happy with it. Even just like the lines all the way down the side, around the back, it looks so good. Obviously we won't know until we flip it over tomorrow morning exactly how it looks on the other side. So in saying that, let's lay down some friggin' fiberglass.
Fiberglassing is another new skill that I'm learning for this build, but thanks to the power of YouTube tutorials, I've got my head around it pretty quickly. I cut the pieces to size, pour out the resin, and basically make sure that the whole thing is covered.
Boom, done.
I know I'm not the best at fiberglassing or 3D printing, so if you have any constructive criticism, feel free to throw it in the comments below, but please be nice. Once the bonnet was dry, we flipped it over, and how insane does this look?
Woo! Porsche bonnet. Look at the curves, dude.
Yeah.
How's that? That is just so cool. I am so happy with that. But then you grab this, which is the badge off the Boxster, and look. Same size and everything. Woo! So I'm so happy.
We glued through the seams and dragged it out into the sun to dry. And now we're moving straight on to the GT3 RS front bumper. This is by far the scariest piece we've had to print. It took over 10 kgs of material and 380 print hours.
And what you see right here in front of me is 65 individual pieces that we've printed. The front guard wasn't too bad to put together. The bonnet was a little more difficult, but this is just gonna be on another level. I'm low-key really excited though, because I can't wait to see this all in one piece. Let's go.
Putting the bumper together was quite literally a big jigsaw puzzle. The shapes of the pieces were so intricate that I had to keep referencing the picture, and it was just a process of elimination. But every piece I added, it got a little easier. And it's pretty crazy to see the shape of the bumper come together as you add each piece.
This is honestly so wild.
Just a couple more pieces and the whole front clip of our GT3 RS will be complete.
It's so satisfying when you grab a piece like this and it just slots in like perfectly. Look at that. This is just the most fun jigsaw puzzle I've ever made. So the guard was cool, the bonnet was cooler, but the front bumper, dang man. This thing is just next level. I'm so happy with how this has all come together. So we're missing a couple of wee bits here and there, so I forgot clearly to print this bit right here, so our spreadsheet didn't work quite as well as I'd hoped for us. And there's a wee bit missing right here, but nonetheless, like, how insane is it to see this shape sitting on the table after just those pieces that we had sitting on the floor. And yes, the front of the bumper does look awesome, but I want to show you around the back. Here's a wee behind the scenes look for you guys. But how cool does this look back here? So you can see all of the tacks that with plastic welded here, but the ducting, it's just so freaking, like, it's insane. I'm actually mind blown. I've left some of the ducting out because we have radiators in either corner of our Boxster, and they're currently covered by these plastic ducts from stock. I think that if we have the ducting in the corners of this current bumper, it'll foul up on those ducts. Now we can remove those ducts if these ducts work well for us. How many times can you say duct in one sentence? But I'm absolutely wrapped with this. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and lay down some fiberglass on the back of this, just so we can actually lift this up without it falling into a million pieces. And in the background, I've also put together the other guard, which means we have the whole front clip printed. So once this is fiberglassed, we can lay it all out and take a look at the whole lot together.
And after adding one last batch of fiberglass, we've officially 3D printed and assembled the whole front end of a 992 GT3 RS.
Well, here we are, 681 hours of print time later, 19 kgs of material, and we have the whole front clip of our GT3 RS printed and ready to be dummy fit on our 986 Boxster. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this is an absolutely surreal feeling to have these printed and sitting here. It's taken me 3 months to make this video. It's the most effort I've ever put into any YouTube content, so if you want to hit that subscribe button and support, it really does help. I could have milked this content, but it was really important for me to have a lot of substance in this video. Oh, and speaking of substance, I think it would be rude not to try and dummy fit these to the front of our car before we end the video. Also, I know I mentioned the 681 hours of print time in these pieces, but I think it's important to talk about the failures. So this is about 100 hours and 5 kgs worth of material and print failures. I am going to keep all of the failures throughout this whole process so that we can weigh and measure it all at the end. Yes, the failures are definitely frustrating, but the end result is definitely going to be worth it. Let's go ahead and dummy fit these pieces to the 986. So we're going to start with our bonnet.
We'll be using the specialty tools of masking tape and G-clamps to dummy fit our panels onto the car. But the first thing that surprised me was just how well these panels fit.
Dang, it's pretty good.
With barely any effort at all, the panels sat in place pretty much where they were supposed to go. A healthy slather of masking tape and this thing is looking amazing.
Holy shit, dude. I'm actually speechless. That is crazy.
When we fit the left fender, that iconic front end really comes to life. But the most noticeable thing is just how aggressive this front end is.
Look how wide this thing is. That's bonkers. The fitment's not terrible, which is crazy. The body line, obviously we've got bodywork ahead of us, but we'll be able to get that so good. But that is just bonkers. Look how much wider the GT3 RS is than a Boxster. That is, luckily, we have some wheels that we can potentially test fit, but that's crazy. Oh, I'm so happy right now. But of course, let's throw the front bumper under and see how it all looks complete.
And last but not least, it's time to fit that ultra aggressive front bumper. A couple of blocks of wood slid under the front end and we're done.
All right, that's the best we're gonna get it, I think.
And there it is, the entire 3D printed front end fitted to the car. After all the setbacks and trial runs, seeing it come together like this is unreal. Part 1 ends with a massive win and we're only just getting started.
I'd call that an absolute success. I can't believe how well they fit up just with a dummy fit. Of course, we're gonna make the proper mounts and tabs and everything to hold these panels on properly, and we're gonna get that fitment just right. But look how aggressive this is. It's so funny looking at the front of the car versus the back of the car. It's just insane. And the width of it is just blowing my mind. I've literally been losing sleep over what wheels we're gonna put on this thing, by the way. So if you have any ideas, jump in the comments and let me know. But of course, this isn't center lock and this isn't a real GT3, so the world is our oyster in terms of wheel choice. This is gonna be a mid-engined 992 GT3 RS, and we're even gonna have a frunk in this thing, so it's going to be super practical as well. I'm absolutely over the moon with the results so far. What a build this is gonna be. Now, I know this video took 3 months, but the next video is gonna be out a lot faster. We're already well through 3D printing the rear quarter panels for this car. And I can tell you, if you think the front of the car looks cool, just wait till we do the rear quarters. It's absolutely bonkers. Of course, we've got a roof to make, we've got the interior to do. This is gonna be one hell of a journey. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace! 992 GT3 RS made out of plastic. Crazy. Bye.